and welcome to the St. Luke's Bariatric Nutrition Healthy Living series. My name is Jen Hosier. I'm the dietitian. I'm going to be walking you through this presentation here today, and we're going to be specifically looking at how to build healthy habits, really the process of going through this. And we labeled this You Build Habits and Habits Build You, because the habits that you choose to build or allow into your life become the core of how you navigate your day, build and mold a certain version of yourself. So if you choose to build habits that support the version of yourself that you want to be, then those habits become routine and automatically support how you want to live. If we want to get the most out of life, then it is fitting for us to try to really consciously and systematically build our lives in a way to reflect this. And so that is what we're going to walk through today, is that process of how to do that, how to build those habits. And the two resources that we pull this information from are The Power of Habit and Tiny Habits, both very good resources. And what I think is really important to remember here is that, first of all, you can't really create lasting change if you're holding on to old habits. So it's really important to consider adjusting your mindset, or at least working on that, and to consider maybe adjusting the environment that you live in. That does mean that you might have to be willing to change, where you go, how you get there, who you hang out with, what you do, when you do it. There might be some things that you want to manipulate in your environment in order to really support the version of yourself that you want to build in over time. So I think it's helpful to keep in mind that this is not a process for judging yourself. The changes that you're trying to work on, or maybe have been trying to work on for a long time, may not have happened really just because the process wasn't set up well to work for you, or it needed to be set up in a different way. It was not a lack of willpower or a weakness on your part or anything like that. There really is a process that you can use to move through and adjust to really help yourself with that. And so it's just not a matter of trying to do it hard enough. There really is a process that you can set up for yourself. So let's take a look at what a habit is. What is the anatomy of a habit? So habits are meant to serve us. They are a reoccurring solution to different problems in life. Your shoe is untied, you automatically tie your shoe. It's an automatic response probably at this point. The first time or first few times you tried to tie your shoe, it probably took a lot of effort and a lot of focus, but over time it became automatic. Right, so you can do it kind of muscle memory, which means you can do it while you're even thinking or doing something else. So that habit of tying your shoe is the solution to the problem, which is that your shoe is untied. And habits dictate a large part of our lives. Depending on the study, 40 to 50%, some would argue even up to 90% of your day is dictated to a certain extent by habits, because habits are automatic. And when an automatic routine is put into motion, it often is governing a good next chunk of your day. So for example, if you put out your cell phone to just check that one email and, oh, there's a notification from Facebook or whatever, the next thing you know, 30 minutes later, you've been doom scrolling, right? So those habits really do dictate kind of what happens next, sometimes without us even realizing it. And this right here is the anatomy of a habit. This is how this cycle works. And we call it a habit loop. And what you need are three components here. We need a cue, we need a routine, we need a reward. And the cue, or the prompt, is the trigger that tells the brain to go into that automatic mode, right? So which habit to use, and just to kind of drop right into that behavior. And the cue or the trigger can be a time, it can be a place, it can be a particular situation, an emotional state, a person. So it could be a lot of different things. Identifying the cue can be the starting point of building or changing a habit. And then we have our behavior, that is just the mental, physical, emotional reaction or response that we have to that prompt or that cue. And then we have the reward or the celebration at the end. That is the end point that helps the brain determine if this particular loop is worth remembering in the future. And so we want to have a strong reward to reinforce the routine so it makes us more susceptible to the cue the next time. That really helps strengthen that cycle for us. And identifying this is also important because that's what's going to reinforce the habit that we're trying to build. And you might find different names. That's why we have different words here on the screen for these different areas. So the prompt or the cue or the trigger, the celebration or the reward, but they're all generally meaning the same thing. Just to give you a couple examples of a habit loop, one might be that a rat pushes a button and he goes to the maze and he gets a treat at the end, right? So he's got a prompt, he has a behavior, he gets a treat at the end. That's his celebration or his reward. Something really simple that all of us do. We walk into a dark room, we flip on a light, we get to see, right? So we were triggered by the darkness. Our behavior or response was to flip on that light. And then the reward is that we get to see the room that we're walking into and what we need to do next. So it can be really simple, even just like that. And over time, if a particular loop is repeated more and more, then it becomes automatic. So the cue and the reward become very powerfully connected. And thus a habit is born. And this connection really creates a sense of anticipation, right? Kind of that craving to drive and resolve the cycle. And so it really can become very powerful if we can find that proper cycle and combination of these three for ourselves and then practice it enough to make it really become automatic. So what are the benefits of a habit, right? Habits are that automaticity, that muscle memory is really what it is. So what it does is it allows our brains to kind of ramp down. It can really kind of do one thing while not having to focus on it. It allows us to complete certain tasks automatically, and we can divert our attention then somewhere else. So we can be doing one thing and really thinking and focusing on another. And habits increase our efficiency. So they allow us to complete the task automatically again while actively thinking about or doing something else. And our brain really cannot multitask. It can only focus on one thing at a time. But if we can create one to be automatic and muscle memory, then it can focus on the other. And then we really are kind of doing two things at the same time because one is on autopilot for us and the other is one we have to focus on. And so we kind of go on autopilot for a lot of things in our life that we have been trained to do, perhaps even since childhood. Like I get up and I go into the bathroom and I brush my teeth in the morning. I put on and tie my shoes before I walk out the door, right? I wash my face before I go to bed, whatever it might be. But there are just certain routines and things that we have been trained to do that are just automatic for us on a day-to-day basis. So let's go ahead and walk through this actual process of building a habit. And we're going to use BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits as our template for doing this. He has a really nice, visually friendly process that we are allowed to use and show to you. And so him being a scientist is going to have a lot of graphs and different things. So he's going to have his behavior models and all that good stuff, but it is very simple. So what he says is that there is a model for a habit. We have a behavior, right? That's that middle section of the habit loop. And that needs to be the culmination of being motivated, having the ability, and being prompted to do that behavior. So those are those three things. And motivation just means something you want to do. You have to have enough motivation to want to do it, right? So it has to be something you're interested in doing, or it's not really going to work out so well. And then we have the ability, right? That is your capability for doing something. It needs to be something that you are able to actually accomplish. So we need to have the ability to do it. And then of course there's the prompt, right? There's that prompt, the trigger, whatever it might be that really kind of sets this all into motion. So we need to have that trigger point. And you really need to have both motivation and ability. And what we see is that the harder a behavior is to do, the less likely you are to do it. The easier it is for you to do, the more likely you are going to do it. And then we can start to see it become a habit. And this is important to think about Because motivation is the unreliable piece here. And it's one that we often tend to try and rely on. We think, oh, if I'm just motivated enough, I can do it. But the problem is motivation is not reliable. It is high and it is low. It's high on one day and low on the next. It's usually higher in the morning and lower in the evening, right? We all have good intentions at breakfast, and then by dinner, we're done. So we really can't rely on that as being helpful consistently for us when it comes to trying to create this habit. So what that means is ability is going to be the more logical and reliable place to start when it comes to trying to create a habit. And we can look at these two things together. So again, we do still need these two pieces here, the motivation and the ability. And what we have here is motivation on the vertical line. So motivation is going to be high or low, right? Depending on the day and the time. And then what we have here along that horizontal axis is ability. And so we're going to have something that's either hard or easy for us to do based on our own personal ability. And so there's a relationship between these two. And what we have here is this green action line, which basically is if we're motivated enough and it's easy enough for us to do, we're going to fall above the action line and we're actually going to do what we're trying to do. If we are not very motivated, if our motivation is low, and if this behavior is hard for us to do, so we really don't have a lot of ability to do it, even if we're prompted, we're not going to be able to accomplish or start this habit cycle or do this behavior. It's too hard, we're not motivated. So we need to kind of find where we're at with this particular habit that we're trying to get going for ourselves and manipulate the ability to help us be above that action line no matter where our motivation is. So if we want to land above that green action line, that means we need to start really easy. And that is kind of the whole point with BJ Fogg's tiny habits. So we start tiny, we make it really easy for us to do so that we are successful no matter where our motivation is at the time. So we'll look at an example here. We'll say first, maybe our goal is to run a marathon. Cool. It might be really easy for you. It might be really hard for you. Probably for most of us, running a marathon is not really easy. It's going to be hard. And so we are not going to have a lot of ability. It's hard for us to do if we're not in shape. And even if we do have a little bit more motivation, if our motivation is high, we're still going to fall below that green action line here where that little red strike is, because it's just too hard. It's too big, right? So we need to cut it down to something a little smaller. We need to start, maybe we still want to do that at some point, but we need to start at a more realistic place for us, at a place where our ability is much higher. So maybe we start with walking a mile. Now, if walking a mile is much easier for us to do, even when our motivation is low, we're still going to fall above that action line. And there's our little smiley face. So it is easy for us to do. And even when motivation is low, we're still going to go and walk that mile when we're prompted, because it's just not a super hard action for us. So we want to think about, again, keeping things really small and easy for us to do. And so let's go ahead and walk through the process of kind of nailing some of these details down. And first, you kind of want to clarify your aspiration. What's the aspiration? This is just, it's like the big idea. It's the strong desire to achieve something kind of big or great, right? So it's a big goal, it's a big idea. And so that's what you want to have. And then you have to think about, okay, well, what are going to be the specific behaviors that I need to consider to help me accomplish this big idea? So aspirations can be things like reducing screen time. I want to sleep better. I want to be more productive. I want to reduce my stress level. Like, those are all big ideas, but they are not really specific, right? I want to sleep better. How am I going to sleep better? What specific things am I going to do? So you want to have that big idea, and then you want to start thinking about all the different potential behaviors that you can practice consistently in order to start to accomplish that big aspiration for yourself. And you really kind of want a magic wand to this guy, right? You're like, anything possible. We're not committing to anything yet. We're just writing down a whole list of practical and crazy ideas, everything wacky, logical, and in between. You just want to really write that all down and not limit yourself, because you're trying to be creative. You're trying to think outside of the box. You're just really trying to give yourself a lot of options here. And you might have to think about what things would I be doing on a consistent basis, or what might be something that I'm only doing one time, right? A behavior that you only do one time but still contributes to that. Maybe it's something that you need to stop doing, not just do, but stop doing in order to help accomplish this big aspiration. So there can be a lot of different potential ideas or behaviors here that you can start putting together. So let's just look at example here. So let's say your aspiration is to try and decrease stress. Well, what kind of things can we potentially practice, right? Maybe you hug someone you love, like your wife or your husband or your kid or your friend or whoever, right? Make yourself a cup of tea. Maybe you're just going to sit down and give yourself 5 seconds to just be mindful. Take a couple of deep breaths. You're going to take a walk after dinner, take a 15-minute nap, play with my pet. Could be a lot of very specific actions you could potentially choose to help reduce your stress level. So that's how you kind of want to think of that. And you can just write these all down on a piece of paper. What's my big idea? And just write a whole bunch of different behaviors around it to help really kind of solidify what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So we clarify the aspiration, and we just come up with a whole bunch of different behavior options. So we got to figure out now, which one are we going to start with, right? So we got to kind of match the specific behavior. We're going to find what's called the golden behavior, the ultimate starting one. And so what you want to think about with that, again, low bar here. First of all, what's going to be impactful? Is it going to be effective to you? So you do want to think of one that's actually going to be helpful, right? If it's not going to really have much impact, then there's no real reason to do it. So we want it to be impactful. It needs to be something that you want to do. That's the motivation piece. It needs to be something that you can do. That's the ability. So you can do it, you want to do it, and it's actually going to have impact. Those are the things that you want to think about. And then again, we're going to plot it, right? Because BJ Fogg is a researcher and a scientist, so he's got all of his graphs and charts and plots and all of that. And, really all he does here is he just tries to plot out what are going to be the most effective and the easiest actions for me to do. And so he's got his high impact or very impactful or very effective actions on the top half of this grid, and the low impact behaviors on the bottom half of this grid, so he can kind of divide out what are more effective and less. And then he divides out right and left. So on the left side, you know what, I'm not going to do that, right? So that's not going to happen. Let's put it on the no side. And then we got the yes side, like, yeah, I would actually do that, right? And then we're looking for that top right quadrant. Anything that we put in that top right corner, those are behaviors that we think are actually going to get us some ground and we're actually going to do. And that's where we want to look for that golden behavior. And generally, you look at the one that's to the top and to the right and up in that corner as much as possible. And typically, that is going to be your golden behavior, or perhaps the one that you really want to start with, kind of as your starting point. So let's make sure we remember, right? If we're trying to build this habit, we do need the prompt, we need the behavior, which we've been trying to nail down here, our golden behavior, and we do need that celebration or that reward at the end. So now that we have nailed down a specific behavior we're going to start practicing, want to make sure it's really small, right? So again, the whole idea here is that we're making really small, so that we have a high ability to do it, that's really easy to do no matter what time of day or whenever we're trying to do this. And then we need to make sure we find a good prompt. Okay, a good prompt is something that's already part of your day. We're not recreating this. It is something that you already do. I start the coffee maker. I feed the dog. I brush my teeth. I go get the mail. Whatever are normal day-to-day things that you already do, those are going to be the best prompts to get this habit cycle going. And then we just kind of want to write it down. We're going to create a recipe here for what your habit cycle is going to be. So we want to have the anchor moment. So after I start the coffee maker, I will blank, I will do my behavior, I will take 5 deep breaths, and then I will celebrate by giving myself a high five, right? It could be something really, really simple or saying, yes, I did it. So maybe it's after I turn off my alarm, I take 2 deep breaths and then I put my palms together and just be really thankful for a minute. So it just can be very, very simple like that, as far as, in this case, an example of trying to manage stress. So we want to have our behavior, it's got to be super tiny. We want to have that good prompt, something that we already do. And then we want to make sure that we are celebrating this in a way that we're really feeling it, that it's good, positive feedback. It makes us feel good. It makes us want to do that action again, right? Something that really just kind of drives home the want for doing it. And it doesn't have to be big. It should be actually kind of like quick, right? It should be something that you can easily do no matter where you are. You can say yes. You can visualize fireworks going on for you. You can raise your arms in victory depending on where you're at. It could be all sorts of things. So a lot of different potential celebrations. We all have our own things that make us feel good that we can visualize or do really quick for ourselves. But that has to be the culmination of that whole cycle so that we can really reinforce it happening again. And once we feel like we have a cycle going, then we go with it. But sometimes things don't always work out exactly how we think. We think we have a good plan, and then we realize in practice that we don't have a good plan. So maybe we need to troubleshoot it a little bit. And this, again, is where kind of that mindset needs to come in. This is not a failure. This is not a lack of motivation, right? We've already talked about that. This is somewhere in my setup, this is not working as well as I thought. And I need to evaluate it. I need to be a detective. I need to make an adjustment and try again to find the right combination that works really well for me, right? So this is the process in a recipe. We just might need to tweak the recipe a little bit. So a little trial and error might be part of the process for you. But what you want to think about with any kind of potential troubleshooting that you need to do is you do want to think about your prompt. Like, is it a good prompt? Is it realistic, right? Is it working for you? Is your ability right, right? Or did you hit that right? Or did you still pick something that's too hard and you need to bring it down another notch? Are you really actually motivated? Is this something you really want to do, right? So you kind of want to think about those different things. And when you're looking at your prompt, you have to remember, if there's no prompt, the habit cycle never starts. So this is the beginning, this is the starting point. So if you find yourself not doing what you're wanting to do, then you might want to look at the prompt and say, okay, well, this prompt isn't working. I should pick a different one and see if that's going to work better for me. So for example, if maybe one of your barriers to working out is that when your alarm goes off in the morning on your phone, instead of getting up and doing your workout, you're scrolling Facebook. Okay, maybe we need to change the prompt, right? So I still need my alarm, but maybe I'll get an alarm clock, or maybe I will take Facebook off my phone so when the alarm goes off, I don't have that option there. Or maybe I'm going to set it across the room on a dresser so I actually have to get up out of bed to go turn the alarm off, right? So there might be just an adjustment to the prompt that you need to make. Then you also do, again, you have to think about your ability, right? Do you have enough time? Do you have the funding if you need it all? Are you physically able to do this? Does this behavior require too much, maybe mental effort or physical effort? Does it fit into your current routine, or is it so far out of your current routine that it's not fitting in to what I do on a day-to-day basis right now? So, if you're trying to de-stress and moving to Maui was on your list of behavior choices, well, that might not fit into your normal day-to-day routine. And let's be honest, for a lot of us, that's not budget friendly, right? So we kind of have to think about those kind of things. And again, pick something that we have that greater ability to actually do. And again, starting very small, very tiny with that. And then if you are trying to consider motivation, again, the motivation fluctuates. So what do we do with that, right? We kind of have to remember, we can't entirely depend on it, but we do need it to be there in some capacity because we still need to want to do this particular action or build this particular habit. So, you might need to start with you, right? Do you really want to do it? Maybe you want to think about, is there some other potential benefit? Is there a punishment or a benefit that can come along with this that you can kind of utilize for that motivation piece? Or would changing the context for you help with that motivation? Maybe if you're trying to exercise or be more active and you notice that there are certain friends that you hang out with who really like to work out, kind of give you that positive peer pressure to be more active in your life. So you can utilize that to help with the motivation. So just kind of thinking about some different areas there where you can make some adjustments to help with that. And we kind of have to be careful, right, again, with the motivation. So we have to make sure that we're not trying to motivate ourselves into an aspiration, right? That's the big idea. That's not the specific thing. That really doesn't seem to hold for us over time. We can maybe do it right away with some willpower, but that does tend to empty out over time and then it kind of fades away. And then we want to kind of think about, okay, what about measurable outcomes? You know, examples like, I want to get straight A's this semester. Well, that's fantastic. I think that's a great goal. You know, but then again, you have to go below that. Well, what specific behaviors do I need to do, and look at those, and you know, what kind of things can I be working on, and what motivation do I have for some of those specific behaviors to help me get to this straight A? And you know, again, going small, right? What's something I can do right now or at a specific point in time that really kind of helps boost that motivation, that's really tiny, that helps me feel more interested and excited about doing this, because we can build motivation off of success, and we can be successful if we're able to do something that's really easy many times over and then slowly build up from there. So again, we want to keep it really, really small. So let's just walk through one example here just to kind of give you an idea of how this can look. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at sleep, right? This is a great one. So better sleep is the aspiration. That's the big idea. But there are multiple options for behaviors that we could practice to help contribute to getting better sleep. We can take some magnesium in the evening because it's kind of relaxing. We can turn off our screens at 9 p.m. or an hour before going to bed. We can dim lights down to kind of help reduce that light exposure. We can use a white noise machine. We can keep the cell phone in the kitchen at night instead of maybe next to the bedside. We can go outside in the morning and kind of get that morning light to help our circadian rhythm, right? So there's a few different things that we can consider. And then we want to find that golden behavior, or the pot of gold in this case, for better sleep. And so we want to start thinking about, where are we going to place these? Are they impactful or are they not? And are they going to be hard to do, or are they going to be easier for us to do? And so we're just kind of plotting these in the high impact or low impact bottom and top half. And then, of course, the easy or hard to do. And so with this particular example, keeping the cell phone in the kitchen at night seemed to be the most impactful and easiest first step. And so that's what we want to start with. Though, and remember, the simplest way to start a new habit is to start with a routine you already have, right? Starting the coffee maker, starting the dishwasher, turning off or on the light, dropping off the kids at school, something you kind of do on a day-to-day basis. And then you want to go ahead and just really write out that recipe, those whole 3 steps here. You want to think about, what's going to be my trigger? What's the one thing that I'm going to do every single day that I already do? I brush my teeth, you know, before I go to bed. And then I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to go walk it out to the kitchen. And then I'm going to rub my hands together with glee because I did it and it was awesome. And I'm successful at putting my kitchen, or my phone in the right spot that I know is going to help me get better sleep. And so that's really kind of that basic idea. And you can do any of these, you know, different steps and put this all together for yourself and tweak it and adjust it over time. But it is a tried and true process that you can go ahead and practice for yourself in trying to purposefully create habits that serve you in the way you want to be served, to create the habits, to create the routines, practice them over and over again, make them muscle memory. And that is going to create an efficiency for you in your day. It's going to create automatic choices that you are trying to make normal for yourself, that you know are better choices for you. And so it can be a really, really great way of just leveling up your health over time. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and this information today. We will catch you next time.